I am Caleb Fielding, and I have a question for you. Do you feel like you are starving spiritually? Perhaps you would say that the church you go to is a great church. It's got great preaching, great music, great people, but you feel on a spiritual level you're starving. If this sounds like you, this is certainly a conversation you should have with your pastor, but the only thing I can tell you over the internet is my story. Growing up, I went to a church that had amazing music, where the music director even wrote a song that became a #1 hit on the Southern Gospel Music Board. I went to a church with amazing preaching, where they started a Bible college because so many men were asking the pastor to teach them how to preach. I was basically at church 5 times a week, and yet I felt like I was starving. This is another area in my life where I was struggling because I did not know the Bible well enough to obey the Bible. The Bible tells us in Hebrews 10:24 and 25, "And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching." The Bible is saying 5 things about church here, and in all honesty, I was obeying one of them. I was attending church a lot, but because I was not obeying the other 4, I was starving to death. I was going to church faithfully and getting some exhortation from the music and the preaching, but the Bible says we're to be exhorting one another. That means that as individuals, we are to exhort people on a personal, one-on-one level. Yes, we need exhortation from music and preaching, and I don't want to discount that at all. But alongside preaching and music, we must exhort one another on a personal level. Otherwise, we will starve to death under good preaching and good music. Exhort means to strengthen, comfort, and encourage. Married people very naturally exhort one another in their marriage. The very act of marriage strengthens people because now instead of going through life singularly, they're going through life as a couple. The Bible says 2 are better than 1. They are automatically encouraged because they're a couple. They live together, so it doesn't take long for them to realize what struggles each one of them is going through. And that puts both of them in a place to comfort one another. Exhortation very naturally happens within marriage. For the singles, the most natural place for exhortation to happen is church. In church, it's natural for you to be strengthened and comforted and encouraged, but you're going to have to open yourself up to get the exhortation you need. God designed all humans to need exhortation. Exhortation is really a more important thing for single men than it is for the single women, although it's important for both, because it's another area where men get their greatest need of respect met. I think this is why there's so many more women in church than men. Men have a need to get their need for respect met, and they're not understanding how to get exhortation in the church. So because they're not getting exhortation in the church, they're not getting their need for respect met. And so because they're not getting a need met that God put in them, they're leaving church. And to get this need met, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, you're really going to have to be intentional about, number 1, exhorting other people. You know, as an adult, you must take the first step so other people can respond to what you're doing. If you need exhortation in church, well, you need to be exhorting other people first. Now, if you've never taken the initiative to personally exhort people, please talk with your pastor. Open up the Bible, show him Hebrews 10:24 and 25, and ask him how you can best exhort people on an individual level. In the last two lessons, I said that you should be close enough to people to know when they are suffering and when they're honored. When you know how people are suffering or when they're honored, this gives you an opportunity to exhort them. This is important because when people are struggling and you encourage them in their struggles, then you give them strength to keep on going. When people are honored and you encourage them, they are now empowered to take steps beyond what they thought was possible. When people are hurt and you comfort them, they are healed more quickly. Exhorting others is often about giving them a moral boost in the midst of their battles. In Exodus 17, we find Moses leading the children of Israel to the promised land. On the way there, the nation of Amalek fought Israel. Moses sent out Joshua to lead his armies into battle. During the battle, God performs a miracle. As long as Moses' hands were held up, Israel was winning the battle. But when Moses dropped his hands, Amalek would start winning the battle. Moses held up his hands as best as he could. But after holding his hands up from morning to night, man, his arms started getting tired. I imagine his blood stopped going to his hands. And so they became too heavy for them to lift up, and Amalek started winning the battle. But then two men, Aaron and Hur, started helping Moses by keeping his hands held up. So they came up, they held up his hands, they held it there. They exhorted him. Because they exhorted Moses, Israel won the battle. Now, I want you to take notice of something very specific here. In the overall picture, Israel needed to win the battle. But Aaron and Hur did not focus on the big picture. They didn't focus on the battle that involved the thousands of men of Israel. They did not exhort the thousands of men that were fighting. Aaron and Hur were close enough to Moses to know that God was blessing him with the miracle, which was great. But they were also close enough to Moses to know he was struggling in the midst of being honored by God. So out of the thousands of people, they exhorted one man in his specific, unique need. And because they exhorted him, thousands won a battle. Do you know anyone in your church well enough to exhort them in their unique situation? Do you know anyone in your church? Here it is. Maybe there's dozens or hundreds or thousands in your church. I don't know how big or small it is. But where you take all that and go and exhort one person, like Aaron and Hur exhorted one man, Moses. Many people in your church have been honored in many unique ways, but with that honor also comes unique struggles. Your exhortation can be the difference in winning a battle in their life, in many lives. Exhorting another Christian is empowering to your local church as a whole. What would it take for you to strengthen and to comfort and to encourage and to exhort people in your local church in their specific, unique situation? If you have not been exhorting anyone on a personal, one-on-one level, I would encourage you to go to your pastor and find out from him if there's anyone who needs that encouragement now. Perhaps it'll be your pastor, or for the single ladies, your pastor's wife who needs the exhortation. As you begin to exhort people in your local church, the natural reaction is for the church to respond by exhorting you. You take the first steps to exhort others, to get to know them, to strengthen and comfort them and encourage them. And doing so, you open the door for them to respond in kind. Sometimes exhortation is like a smile. One person is smiling and laughing and everyone gets cheered up due to the exhortation. Sometimes in life, because you've been exhorting others, they can immediately turn around and exhort you. This is a very shallow form of exhortation, but it's better to have a shallow form of exhortation than no exhortation. But I would encourage you to take that shallow form of exhortation and increase the depth with it over time. You know, you can start exhorting people today with just a smile, and then get to know them and build trust, and over time go from shallow to deep. See, what will happen is sooner or later, there will be times where you face battles and storms, and to get through them, you will need someone to exhort you in a deep and meaningful way. We mentioned in the last 2 lessons that you need to share your suffering and your honor with those in your local church. When someone knows your unique set of suffering and honor, it gives them an opportunity to strengthen and comfort and encourage and exhort you in a personal, specific, unique way. The more aware the more aware people are of your situation, the more they will be able to exhort you. In Acts 27, we find Paul. He is a prisoner, and he is being transported by ship to Rome. On the trip, they run into a storm. Paul the preacher was in the storm with the captain of the ship, Roman soldiers, sailors, other prisoners, slaves, and passengers of all types. Because Paul knew exactly what they were going through, he could exhort them in the best way possible. Paul did not give these men useless platitudes. He gave them real strength, real comfort, and encouragement. During the storm, some of the men had the idea that they should jump into the lifeboat. But because Paul knew their situation, he told them not to do it. So what they did was they cut it off the ship. They totally got rid of the ability to use the lifeboat. Why? Because of exhortation. They went through this storm for 14 days, but the entire time Paul exhorted them in their storm. Paul knew about their specific storm. He knew how bad he knew of their bad idea to get out of their storm. He knew how long the storm would last. He knew where they were trying to go. He also knew when to get off the ship. He knew all this because he was very aware of what everyone on the ship was going through. And this empowered him to exhort everyone on the ship. Exhortation is most effective when someone is exhorting you in your specific place of suffering and honor. And when someone is exhorting you in your specific storm, it will allow you to much more easily make it through the storm. Do people in your life have an opportunity to exhort you in your storms? Or do they have no idea what you're going through? If they know you are going through a storm, do they have enough information to actually encourage and comfort and strengthen you in the storm? Are people in your life able to exhort you in your storms? Or is your relationship just too shallow? You know, if you're starving to death in church, is it because no one has a way to know what you're going through? In conclusion, exhortation is not about a shallow, how are you? When you get into church, exhortation is about encouraging, it's about comforting, it's about strengthening people. Especially in the midst of their suffering, their battles, and their storms. But do you know others well enough that you can exhort them? Do others know you well enough to exhort you? Exhorting others and being exhorted is necessary for you to have joy in church. Being exhorted and exhorting others is necessary for you to go to church and be fulfilled. Why? Because you're obeying the scriptures when you're, one, exhorting others, and two, when they're exhorting you. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please share it. If you didn't like it, please leave a comment. The next lesson will be coming soon. Thank you for watching.